Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton. We are recording this on Friday, and it's been quite a return from the bye week for the New York Giants. A lot of stuff going on. We touched on that on the emergency podcast from earlier this week. Daniel Jones, no longer the starting quarterback with the Giants. Tommy DeVito will start Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, depending on how things go. That should continue moving forward. We will see. So on today's show, I know some of you have been upset. It's probably a very small minority that we haven't talked much about the game itself, so we will touch on that a little bit. But I think there's still some things we need to clean up. Daniel Jones spoke yesterday, a minute and a half prepared statement that he read, and then he took questions in what was likely his last press conference with the Giants beat and the New York media. So we'll talk about that a little bit and some overview going into Sunday. So I appreciate producer Paul Wood getting this together. Hope everybody isn't snowed in today. You know, you get about an inch and a half of snow. You know, we go how many months without rain and any kind of precipitation, and then all of a sudden they tease us with a little rain yesterday, and then you wake up and there's snow on the ground. So it's one of those weeks. So let's get into it. There's some things that have gone on, obviously, since we did the breaking news podcast with Jones being benched and Tommy DeVito taking over and Drew Lock being number 2. One of those is Tim Boyle, former Jet, former Packer, is now here on the practice squad. So now there are 4 quarterbacks on the roster. So what does that mean? Well, obviously, you've read a lot and heard a lot about the $23 million injury guarantee for Daniel Jones. Let's talk about that, and I'm just going to make it as simple as I can for myself because that's how I've broken it down. And then, you know, if anybody has any questions off of that down the road, feel free to email me, reach out on social media, and I'll see if I can answer those questions as well. But here's the deal. The injury guarantee is not owed to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is owed, or has been owed, $82 million guaranteed for the contract that he signed after the 2022 season. So he's gotten $82 million guaranteed. He is not losing money no matter what happens here. The injury guarantee is for when a player suffers a severe injury and that injury prevents that player from passing a physical 5 days into the new league year, which is essentially free agency in March of the following year, so March of 2025. The Giants have paid Daniel Jones, no pun intended, every dime that they prepare or are willing to pay him. So why is so much talk about the injury guarantee? Because there's no money on the books. There's no new money on the books for Daniel Jones. It's a dead money cap hit next year, regardless of what they did with Jones, if they release him. But if he were to get hurt and not be able to pass a physical, to protect the player, it's the player's reps that want this in the contract because they don't want Jones or any player to get injured during what could be the final year of his contract, and that is this year, 2024. They don't want him to get injured. He's not getting any new money, and then the team could just cut him without financial penalty. Now, if Daniel Jones did not have the injury guarantee, that's what the Giants would have done, and they likely would have done it a lot sooner. They would have just eaten the money and released Daniel Jones. But because of that injury guarantee, that's on the books, and now you've got to kind of play around with it. So let's fast forward to Daniel Jones's news conference yesterday. I've written all along, and I've told you, the benching of Daniel Jones is both a football and a financial decision. The football, they are 2-8. Jones has not played well. He took responsibility and accountability for that yesterday. And they came out of the bye believing that they needed to make a change at quarterback. The financial part of it is they have this injury guarantee, and they don't want to risk anything. They don't want to risk Jones getting injured, whether it's in practice or in a game, and then having to pay him $23 million next year. That goes straight to their salary cap when they've already made the decision that they are going to move on from Daniel Jones. So when Daniel Jones talks about it yesterday, here's one of the aspects that can happen. Now, 2 years ago, when Derek Carr was in Las Vegas, he had an injury guarantee. They made the decision that they were going to move on from Derek Carr, and they essentially told him he can go home. They were paying him. He was paid out. They did not want him to risk anything. They didn't want him to on them, and they didn't want him to be around the team. So they sent him home. Last year in Denver, Russell Wilson had an injury guarantee. They ended up benching him as starting quarterback at the end of the year. Russell Wilson stayed with the team. Denver rolled the dice and played with fire a little bit. They actually had Russell Wilson dress for games. So obviously the risk was not, it didn't ultimately cost them anything because Russell Wilson did not get hurt. He did not play, and he ended up leaving. So now that brings us to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones can theoretically waive the injury guarantee. It would take paperwork. It'd be a contract adjustment, but he would be able to say, no, I'm not going to collect the injury guarantee. You're not on the hook for $23 million if I get injured. Now, why would Daniel Jones do that? Well, if he's going to be benched, he's not going to do that. There's no reason for him to do that. That's any leverage that he has in terms of them not being able to do anything or do whatever they want to him. But why would he waive it? Well, he would waive it, and he left that door open yesterday, if they said, we will play you at quarterback. If it's only a financial decision, so Jones's representatives would say to the Giants, look, we'll waive the injury guarantee, keep playing him at quarterback. We're going to eliminate the risk of him getting hurt and that costing you $23 million. The Giants aren't going to do that because this isn't just about the injury guarantee. It's about the football. They've made the call on the football to make the change at quarterback. So that's where we're at. Daniel Jones has the injury guarantee. He is not going to waive it because they are not going to play him. And you're going to look at a situation where now, the last 2 days, everything that Daniel Jones has done in practice, which is very little, is going to be analyzed. Now, let's talk about this. I was at practice. The media viewing period is usually about 15, 20 minutes. We don't get to see much. Yes, Daniel Jones on Wednesday was the fourth quarterback up in individual position drills. And what did that consist of? Consisted of throwing passes to equipment staffers and assistant coaches and handing off to the running backs. So Daniel Jones handed off to Turbo Miller. That's what it was. Tim Boyle is now signed. He was getting the third. You can't even say reps because it's not reps, but he was third in line. Daniel Jones is fourth. Now, sometimes in individual drills, the more veteran players go last. There have been many a wide receiver drill where Darius Slayton has gone last in the summer and training camp. So it's not necessarily a depth chart situation in those periods. And when the Giants go to team periods, which they did Wednesday and Thursday, then Tommy DeVito would get all of the first team reps with the offense in team drills. Drew Lock would run the scout team, which consists of running the offense that is made up of practice squad players, running Tampa Bay plays against the Giants' first team defense. And then Tim Boyle and Daniel Jones kind of stand around and watch. And that's the way it's been. That's the way it was during the year when Daniel Jones was the one, Drew Lock ran the scout team, and Tommy DeVito would fight for scraps to get an opportunity to maybe show some in scout team or what have you. So fast forward to Thursday. We're watching the viewing period. We were in the field house because of the inclement weather. The Giants offense was all the way in the far corner, and they were running what you would consider an installation period, when they would kind of walk through a play that was put into the game plan. And in those situations, it's only the offensive players, and some players, whether they're practice squad or reserve guys, and equipment staffers and assistant coaches, jump into defense for the walkthrough just to kind of give them a look. Where's this guy supposed to be lining up? Where does Tampa line their guy up? And Daniel Jones went out there and he was lining up as safety. This was not a scout team live period safety. This was Daniel Jones on the field doing things that a reserve player would do. All he was doing, it was a stand-in. Think of a play, and if there were, you're rehearsing a Broadway play, and the understudy ends up stepping in just for rehearsal because you need to figure out the lighting, you need to make sure where that player is as far as what is going on. That's what Daniel Jones was doing. So in an example of how the media, and I'm part of it, just takes a story and runs with it. The beat writers who were at the practice yesterday, we all put out on social media after our media viewing period ends, details of what Daniel Jones was doing, because it's notable. It's notable what the starting quarterback for 10 weeks is now doing in practice. People want to know. Essentially, the answer is nothing, but you're going to detail and observe what he's doing. So you're trying to describe what he's doing. And I tweeted out, he handed off to running backs. In one-on-one drills, he was throwing to running backs who were trying to be covered by linebackers. Meanwhile, Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock were on the other side of the field for one-on-one drills with the wide receivers and the tight ends and the DBs. But when everybody tweeted that Daniel Jones was playing scout team safety, it just spread like wildfire and went viral. And you have reporters who are not at practice, all of a sudden are taking that one element without context and saying the Giants are looking to embarrass Daniel Jones because they're playing him at scout team safety. He was not playing scout team safety. How foolish would the Giants be if they decided that Daniel Jones, they weren't going to risk his injury guarantee by playing him at quarterback, but they were going to play him at scout team safety? He was lined up in a walkthrough at safety to give a look as to where Tampa Bay likes to play their safeties. That's it. They were not looking to embarrass Daniel Jones. They were not looking to put him in a situation where people would mock him. The Giants haven't had to do anything for 6 years. Daniel Jones has been mocked around the league by opposing players, opposing coaches, fans, media, everybody. So now all of a sudden that Daniel Jones has finally been benched, now all of a sudden it's shame on the Giants for humiliating Daniel Jones. I mean, anyone with sanity knows what's going on here. I'm going to leave it at that. What do I think happens with Daniel Jones? I don't think Daniel Jones will be with the team on site much longer. I would imagine that if he lasts through Sunday, he will be in a suite somewhere. He won't be on the sideline so that cameras can't seek him out. That would be my take on it. And then ultimately the Giants would say, we're still going to pay you, but you're not required to be here. You can go home. You don't have to be here at practice. You don't have to be in meetings. If you want to be here, you can be here. But I think that's kind of what they're working on. So Daniel Jones left that door open. Why wouldn't the Giants release Daniel Jones? They don't want him, right? I've heard that from fans. You think the Giants want any part of in Week 18, if they're down in Philly and the Eagles have clinched everything and they're playing backups and they don't want to play their backup and they're going to put Daniel Jones on the field in an Eagles uniform and have Saquon Barkley on the sideline jumping up and down, cheering for Daniel Jones if he throws a touchdown pass in Philly? Why even welcome that? Why even put that out there? So I would be very surprised if the Giants release Daniel Jones. I think they'll probably come to an agreement like the Raiders did with Derek Carr a couple years ago, that You're not required to be here for your sanity, for our sanity. Daniel Jones isn't a rabble rouser. I mean, he's not going to start flipping tables and causing problems internally. I don't think that that's a reason to want him to go home. But I think it's one of those things where they'll have to figure out if that's the best thing for Daniel and for the team. So they'll move forward. But I think Daniel Jones will be under contract for the remainder of the year. I don't believe he will waive the injury guarantee if they couldn't assure him that he'd be the starting quarterback. They're not going to do that. They've made the decision football-wise. So that's where we're at. Do you feel sorry for Daniel Jones? Sure. It's not easy to be in that press conference yesterday. It's not easy to watch Daniel Jones' voice, his eyes tearing up and his voice cracking. Reminded me a little of Eli Manning with the benching with Geno Smith back in 2017. But the reality is that, this was a means to an end. This was the end game. And I give credit for Daniel Jones. I come out, you read your statement. It was gracious. It was classy. Nobody expected anything differently from Daniel Jones. He's handled himself that way his entire career. And that's probably why, or one of the reasons why, he's actually held this job as long as he has. Because earlier this season, his play was just as bad as it was in Germany. So some of the plays that he was missing were in week one. And as I've written, this isn't piling on Daniel Jones. It's time. It is time for this organization to make the break. And it's time for Daniel Jones. Let's be honest. He needs a change of scenery. He needs to go somewhere that he's not answering to Dave Gettleman's number 6 overall pick and can't believe he's gotten a contract from the Giants and all that stuff. It'll be good to just move away, both sides, but ultimately they will do that. So that's where we're at with the Daniel Jones situation. Hopefully I covered it. Hopefully I gave you a reason. Again, I don't even know why I feel the need to say it, but this isn't piling on Daniel Jones. I have a lot of respect for Daniel Jones. That was not easy yesterday to watch him go through what he went through. I wanted to go over to him and start talking to him and tell him I appreciated him for 6 years and covering a player like that and always was giving of his time in the locker room. And, but all that stuff, that has nothing to do with it. If Daniel Jones doesn't know that by now with people who cover him, then nothing that was going to be said yesterday or said in print is going to matter. That's the way I look at it. So personally, professionally, I've covered Daniel Jones the way I cover everyone. I think he has respect for me personally, professionally. I certainly have it for him. So peeling back the curtain a little bit, it's tough. I've seen a lot of players come and go here since I joined the beat in 15 years ago in 2009. And, going to see a lot of players move on beyond this now. So that's the way it's going. So Sunday, a couple homecomings. Sterling Shepard will be in the building. I talked to Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt about Shep coming back, and they talked about the lessons they learned from him over the last couple of years. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So a lot of Giants will be happy to see Sterling Shepard. Thomas McGahee, special teams coordinator for years for the Giants, is now in Tampa Bay. So T-Mac will be back in the Meadowlands. So we'll see, what kind of reception he gets from people on the Giants. And, happy to see him. I'm sure the specialists, Graham Gano, Casey Kreider, Jamie Gillen, will all be happy to see T-Mac. And, we'll see how that plays out. So, big piece of news, if you haven't noticed, from Thursday night's game. Cleveland upsets Pittsburgh in Cleveland. So the Browns win. Jameis Winston, what does that do? Bumps the Giants up another spot in the Tankathon draft order projections. Giants are now third. That's because Cleveland now has 3 wins and not 2. So they were tied and they were ahead of the Giants. Now they've fallen behind. So the Giants are third going into Sunday. in the draft order projections if that's what you choose to root for. Giants' strength of schedule was also helped by Pittsburgh losing. Because it's the worst strength of schedule, and it's the teams you beat, so they played both Cleveland and Pittsburgh, but their strength of schedule took a little bit of a hit, which is a good thing when you're talking about these projections. So going into the weekend, I got my Army hat Saturday night, Yankee Stadium, Army, Notre Dame, and it's not that I don't like Notre Dame, but I'm really looking forward to the Shamrock Series. Undefeated Army, 9-1 Notre Dame, should be pretty cool. So going to that game in the Bronx, and so if anybody's around, you see me, say hello. So let's talk to this game. Baker Mayfield has lost some weapons. Mike Evans should come back, but obviously he's coming back from a hamstring. So let's see, how that takes shape on Sunday. A big thing for the Giants, Shane Bowen talked about it yesterday in his presser, is the run defense. We all know it. We all know the run defense has been bad. I asked Shane, and I think, maybe the week off helps them kind of reset. When you're in a season, you're just kind of plugging holes and trying to see how you can get ready for the next game. Maybe they're able to clean the slate a little bit, break it down, see what they're not doing well. The edges have not played well. The corners on the edge have not played the run well. So maybe the Giants can improve their run defense by kind of taking more responsibility in all the different spots. Kayvon Thibodeau was a full participant in practice yesterday. He will return from injured reserve on Sunday. I think Thibodeau will help in certain spots. Be interesting to see him back. He talked about how he considers coming back a blessing, that it kind of opened his eyes a little bit being away for an injury during the season. If you remember when he was a rookie, he got hurt in the preseason and missed the first couple games of his rookie year, but has not been injured during the year and having to get surgery and be on IR, and the way, he had to wait it out and come back. So that'll be an interesting thing, but watch for the corners tackling and watch for how the edges kind of contain in the running game against Tampa Bay. That'll be a big point of emphasis for the Giants. I do think that's one of the reasons that contributed to Tay Banks, and the frustration with Tay Banks is not just in coverage, but coming up and making plays in the run game. That's something he did last year, and I think he shied away from a little bit this year, and maybe that's cost the Giants a little bit in certain spots. So watch that defense. I think you're going to see the rookies take yet another step. Drew Phillips, Tyler Nubin on defense. You want to see them, finish this final stretch here of 7 games strong. Offensively, I think the running game is where it's at. I think Tyrone Tracy will continue to get the bulk of carries. Talk to Tracy and talk to Malik Neighbors, and I thought it's a cool story that I'll be posting on NorthJersey.com. Back in week 2, when Malik Neighbors had that drop on 4th down in Washington that he was really inconsolable about, felt like he cost the team the game. One of the first players to come over and console him was Tyrone Tracy. Kept his head up, said some great things to him. Fast forward to Germany, and Tyrone Tracy had the fumble in overtime that contributed to the loss. Tracy was inconsolable, and one of the first guys to come up to him was Malik Neighbors. I talked to Tracy and Neighbors about that bond and got some great stuff from Neighbors yesterday, so hopefully you guys enjoy that story. Look, this rookie class, regardless of what goes on, now they're waiting for a quarterback to see what's going to happen at quarterback. But this rookie class is one of those, if you want to look back to 2007 for the Giants, those guys that became a core of this team. That's what you hope for these rookies this year, between Neighbors and Tracy and Nubin and Phillips and Theo Johnson. We'll see where Darius Musa fits, but then also Elijah Chapman. So it's where they're at. How will the offense change? I don't think it's going to change much. I think the Giants believe that Tommy DeVito and his quick release, you heard Dable mention his release the other day, and what Neighbors said yesterday about what Dable told him about Tommy DeVito is that he throws with great anticipation. Now, that's been a big knock against Daniel Jones. I think Neighbors, the fact that he brought that up and said, when you come out of your break, make sure you turn your head around fast because DeVito's going to have the ball there. I think that will be the biggest challenge, or not even challenge, but the gauntlet at the feet of Tommy DeVito is that when we call play, be confident it's going to be open and throw the football. And that's something that Daniel Jones did not do. And I think the Giants believe that DeVito could take advantage of that. It's not saying DeVito is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, but I think those are the kind of plays that the Giants think they can take advantage of going into Sunday. So, last thing, turnovers, takeaways. The Giants need to get the football. Shane talked a lot about the idea of the pass rush and leading the league in sacks and now being, I think, second or third in sacks is great. But he's said this multiple times now, said it again yesterday. The quarterbacks are the biggest fumblers in the league, and Giants certainly know that. But they need to be able to get the football away from the quarterback if they sack him. And Brian Burns did that in Cleveland earlier this year. But they need more of that. They need to get some turnovers this weekend if they're going to have an opportunity to win. So that's where we're at. Some of you will be rooting for a loss on Sunday. I know that. But we'll be back to wrap it all up post-game. So for producer Paul Wood, enjoy the game, Giants fans, this weekend if you can. Remember, there are only 7 more of them, and they're going to go fast. And when you're sitting there in February and you're waiting and saying, man, I can't wait for Giants football to come back, cherish these games. Most of you have already paid for them, so you might as well, if you can't get your money back, you might as well try to enjoy them. Try to find something in the games that you can enjoy. I know there's not a lot. I know the Giants have, punished you a lot over the last decade or so, but you're all sticking with us here at All In, and we appreciate it. So we will stay all in moving into Sunday, the game against Tampa Bay, and Tommy DeVito back under center for the New York Giants. We'll be there to break it all down at MetLife after the game. Enjoy our coverage at NorthJersey.com. And again, for Paul, I'm Art. We're all in. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch you on Sunday from MetLife. See if the Giants can get another win, their first win since Seattle.